Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to talk horror books. And today I'm here to talk to you about the new book releases for February 2022.
It's coffee time.
So February comes packed with new releases, and I have a total of 24 books that are coming out in February 2022. So we're going to have to fly through this list, and there are so many different titles that I hope there's going to be something here for everybody. I feel like 2022 has started really strong when it comes to releases, and there are also so many other book releases that I'm expecting, some that I didn't even mention on my last video of, most expected releases. There is also Cloud in a Cornfield Part 2. There is, of course, a new Eric LaRocca book, We Can Never Leave This Place, and there's just so many things coming in 2022. But for now, we have the new releases for February. The Reign of Osiris, and this is part 3 of Ramses The Damned by Anne and Christopher Rice. If you guys probably follow the news, you know that recently Anne Rice passed away, and it was very abrupt and it was very unexpected, and it really did shake the horror community because a lot of people did grow up reading her books. I myself, when I was a teenager, some of the first vampire books I ever read were her books. I think it's the first vampire book I ever read. Interview with the Vampire is just such typical, but it is. And I remember picking up all the books by her in my local library and really enjoying them, and one of them was The Mummy, and I've always loved that book a lot, and I've always wanted to revisit it. And it is really bittersweet that this book is coming out now in February, just shortly after she passed away. But if you followed these book series, I hope that even though it's bittersweet, that you're excited to get to read the next part in the story. String Follow by Simon Jacobs, and this is a dark, comedic, suburban gothic story, and it follows just a bunch of misfits, teenager misfits from Ohio, and there is this evil force that is trying to manipulate these misfits and use them to their advantage. That is all that I know, but if you love this kind of stories and you don't mind some dark comedy added to your gothic story, this might be for you. I'm a little bit, divided when it comes to comedy. Happens the same thing with horror comedy movies. They're mostly not my cup of tea, so I'm not particularly going to pick up this one myself, but maybe some of you guys love horror comedies in general, so you might find this one more appealing than I do. The Violins, Delilah S. Dawson, and this is a horror thriller that follows a mysterious virus that starts spreading, and it's causing people to get really violent and aggressive. So our main character has been in an unhappy marriage. From the outside, everybody thinks that she's in this beautiful marriage with children and her life is perfect. But far from the truth, because she is stuck at home. She's a prisoner at her own home, being abused by her husband. So here, trigger warning for abuse. And our main character uses the confusion that this virus creates in the world to free herself from her abuser. So this sounds like a really interesting take on a possible, apocalyptic story in which a virus is released into the world, and we also have this struggling woman that takes this virus as an opportunity to free herself. So this sounds really interesting to me, and this is one of the ones that I would like to check out. Horror Hotel, this is a YA horror thriller, and this one is kind of a modern take because we do have here some YouTubers that, in their channel, they decide to go to places that are haunted and film the experience. So basically they find this hotel in LA that is supposed to be haunted, and they go there to spend the night and film it, and to make some nice content for the YouTube, and they are expecting some creepiness, but they know that all of these hauntings, it's just stories and nothing is real. But of course, when they enter this specific hotel, things start to go slightly wrong. This one sounds really interesting to me because it is a YA book, and I want to read more YA and middle grade horrors this year. Also, it takes place in a haunted hotel, and I am a sucker for those things. You know, you give me haunted asylum, haunted hotel, and I'm like, where do I sign? And then we have the possibility of maybe, you know, some found footage thing or some kind of camera work here. I don't know how they're going to approach the whole YouTube thing, but I would have loved to see some kind of descriptions of footage from their camera and stuff like that. When a Killer Calls, and this is non-fiction true crime, and it is based, of course, on a real case that happened in America. It depicts the crimes of Larry Jean Bell, and it is kind of also portraying, you know, the struggle to actually identify and catch this killer. There is not much that I know about this particular true crime story, but it is based in the 80s, and it follows the disappearance of some young girls that were taken. So this is a book that I would like to pick up to really get to know the story, since I am unfamiliar with this killer. Ghost of a Marriage by Richard Dansky, and here we follow a guy whose marriage fell apart, Gary, and since his marriage fell apart, he started to see things and hear things inside of his house, and he thinks something's coming for him. Of course, nobody believes him, so I like this setting always. I like kind of somebody that's being hunted by something and we don't know if it's real, if it's not real. So another one that sounds pretty cool. Dead Silence by S.E. Barnes, and this is a horror sci-fi that I'm really excited about. This has been pitched Titanic meets The Shining, and I was like, yes please. And it includes a ghost ship, so like, what more can you ask for? So Claire is about to get fired, and she is in her ship, and she here's a distress call from a luxury line ship that disappeared over 20 years ago, and they decide, you know, instead of going to Earth and just basically losing my job and being obsolete for society, I'm just gonna go and see what I can find in this ghost ship. So that's what they do. They go and try to salvage, like they think, you know, if we go to the ship, it's a luxury one, so we can get things from it, and you know, we can not be unemployed and just make some money out of it. But the problem is, of course, once they enter this ship, this lost ship, things are gonna start to go wrong, and I'm just here for it. This sounds like so good. If you guys don't know, I'm saying it all the time, but one of my favorite horror sci-fi movies is Event Horizon, and this gives me vibes. So yeah, this is one that I'm definitely gonna try to buy as soon as it comes out so that I can read it. Now we have another book that was on my anticipated list for 2022, and that is Echo, and this is a horror thriller by the author of Hex, a witch book that I really enjoyed. And in this case, we have some journalists that were chasing a story in the Swiss Alps, and all of a sudden then Nick wakes up at the hospital. He had been in a coma, and he tells the police he doesn't remember what happened to them while they were in this mountain, but of course Nick does remember what happened to them. Cherish Far by Bethany C. Morrow, and this is a YA horror thriller that sounds really interesting to me because it has been said that it has kind of the vibe the movie Get Out, and I am absolutely interested in that. And it follows this girl that she is the only black girl with black parents in that neighborhood, and the book is a social commentary on race and class difference. So Farah is the only black girl with black parents, but her best friend is a black girl adopted by a really wealthy white family, and she kind of manages to get her way into spending some days living with this family, and then things start to happen, I guess. I didn't want to read too much because the synopsis was extremely long, and I don't want the synopsis to spoil things for me. It's also been said that you will enjoy this book if you loved My Sister is a Serial Killer or My Sister the Serial Killer, and I did enjoy that thriller as well, so this is another one that I'm intrigued by. Jobon by Monica Ojeda, and this is a book that was originally published in 2018 called Mandibular, but now it has been translated into English, so everybody that, you know, was not able to check out the Spanish version can now read this thriller. We follow two girls that look extremely alike, Fernanda and Annalise, and one day Fernanda wakes up held hostage in a cabin by one of the teachers, and this is where the story starts. So that's a pretty good strong start to a horror thriller, and I didn't know about this book. I'm probably gonna try if I can find the original Spanish one because I can read that one in original, but if you guys didn't know about this book, I think it's also good to support Latino authors. The Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Grant, and this one follows a woman that has kind of given up a lot of things in her life. She has basically went from being a novelist to being somebody that has a dull life, that has no sex life, and it is kind of like a hunter for rare books. And one day she receives this kind of job to look for a very specific book that it's supposed to be like the book of magic and sex, something like that. And then she starts her quest to try to find this book that she doesn't even know if it actually even exists. This is an erotic thriller about the things that we want and what we are willing to do in order to get what we need and what we want. Please keep in mind that this is an erotic thriller, so check out if this book might be too mature for you or not. You can decide if you want to go into it or not, because I'm expecting it's going to have a lot of sex content. Then we have Wendy's Final Task, which is the third book in a trilogy that Stephen King and Richard Chismar wrote together. To be honest with you, I haven't even read the first book. Even though it's a Stephen King book, I never felt the attraction to that book. I don't know why. I think I'll read it at some point now the whole trilogy is out, but I don't even own it. It's one of those that I nearly picked up a couple of times, but I never really felt, you know, that attracted to it and to the story. But I'll have to read it at some point because I do want to read all Stephen King books. But yeah, if you know, are a fan of the trilogy, if you were expecting the third book, now you can get it. Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. This is a sci-fi book, and it sounded really intriguing to me because the synopsis is just one line, which is basically Mickey 7 is not going to let Mickey 8 take his place. So Mickey 7 is kind of like an expendable. I'm guessing after he does a certain job for a certain amount of years, maybe he gets replaced by someone, and it just goes on and on like this. And this specific Mickey 7 refuses to, you know, get replaced. I don't know if it's a cloning story. I have no idea, but it has me intrigued. I also want to read more sci-fi. I say this every year and then I never do, so please give me some strength this year to finally get to some sci-fi horror books. The Beyond by Ken Brosky follows Moon, and Moon's brother goes missing in a town called Black Rock. So Moon's fears is that her brother has, you know, succumbed to addiction again. So she wants to find him and hires a private investigator. So Moon, together with the private investigator, start to dig deeper into the history of the town of Black Rock and people that have went missing there and sketchy things that have been happening in that town. And this, I guess, is going to be perfect for people that love stories based on small towns with secrets. So keep an eye for this one. Blood Work by Jeff Johnston. And this is kind of like an intricate story that combines two characters that end up meeting. One of them is a reverend, and all his life he's had really bad luck. His parents died in an accident when he was 7. His aunt also passed away right before his graduation. Then his wife also died. And now he has found out that he has cancer. So needless to say, he has not been a lucky man. However, he still has his faith. He still believes in God's plan. And then we have another man called Scott, and he has found some sort of religious organization that has led him to the path of cannibalism. And then these two characters meet, and I'm not really sure what's going on with the story. That's all that I could gather from the synopsis, but I have a feeling that this is going to be a really weird story. So I would say this might be something for people that like a little bit of weirdness in their horror. The Lake of the Dead is a horror mystery classic that was originally published in 1942, and it is one of the most popular Norwegian thrillers. I think it's also been made into a movie, and now it's being republished. I've never heard of this, but I do like, for some reason, you know, thrillers that come from Norwegian or like Sweden, places like that, Finland. I find them so different from other type of thrillers, and they all have these kind of atmosphere to them, I guess because of also the colder weather that they tend to have for most part of the year, that makes them compelling in a different way. This one is supposed to be a mix of supernatural horror and murder mystery, and like I said, I've never read it and I'm always up to discover classics. Ecstasy by Claire Legrand, and this is a YA horror fantasy that includes LGBT characters, and it's the new novel lyrically written by the author of So Kill Girls. I read So Kill Girls by Claire Legrand and I really enjoyed it, so I am really excited about this one. Plus the cover is stunning. All I know is that this girl is chosen and she gets a crown, and she's supposed to be one of the ones protecting a town from evil. That's all I know, but I am in for the ride. Like I said, when I read Soul Kill Girls, I really enjoyed it. I just love the combination, like the way that she merged fantasy and horror. It was exactly my type of thing, so I kind of high hopes for this one. 5 Birds for 7 Songbirds by John Everson, and this is a horror thriller. This is supposed to be kind of a giallo film, an Italian giallo movie, but taking into a novel, and I'm all for it. So we follow this girl that has been accepted to a very renowned conservatory in Belgium, and she goes there, and then the people in this place start to die one by one, killed by their own instrument that they were playing. This sounds fantastic, and it does give me giallo vibes, and I'm really excited for this. Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. This is a horror story that includes LGBTQ characters, and it's the first time that we have trans characters in an post-apocalyptic story, and I'm really excited to read these because we have a bunch of different characters here that are kind of pushed together in a post-apocalyptic world. And I'm really excited to read this one and see all the representation in the story. I do feel like we are still too behind when it comes to representation of characters in books, in horror books, and I'm happy to see that we are getting more and more of LGBTQ characters included in horror. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, a mystery thriller, and I tried the guest list by this author and I didn't like it at all, so I'm not expecting to pick up any of her other books anytime soon. She might just not be the author for me, but I know that a lot of people like her, so I wanted to mention this new release. We follow Jess. She needs a change in her life and decides to go and spend some time with her half-brother that lives in Paris. So when she gets to her brother's apartment, that apartment is way too expensive for him. So she starts to question how her brother can afford that apartment, and on top of that, her brother is also nowhere to be seen. So now she has to figure out where is her brother and how come that he lives in such an expensive place. Then we have The Hunting of Las Lajas, and this is a horror gothic story that takes us to Argentina in 1913. And this follows Ursula. She takes a job as a main gardener in a property in Buenos Aires, Las Pampas, and when she gets there, she's supposed to basically bring the garden back to life before the owners return to live there because the place has been abandoned for a while. But when she gets there, the people in town tell her that she should not go into that property because it is believed to be haunted. Now, this sounds so good and it sounds perfect for people that loved books like Mexican Gothic, and I did really enjoy that one, so I feel like this one is another one that has to go to my list. Beneath the Stairs by Jennifer Fawcett, and this is a horror thriller. We follow our main character as she has to return to her hometown when her best friend from her childhood tries to commit suicide. So trigger warning here for suicide. And not only that, but when they were little girls playing in their hometown, they entered a house that is supposed to be haunted, where killings happened in the past. So after they went into this house when they were young, they didn't come out the same. So since this is a horror thriller and we have this octagon house, which is the house where the killings happened, I don't know if we're gonna go into the supernatural or we're gonna take the more realistic route, but this is a horror thriller that does sound interesting. I love stories about houses that have a past that we have to unravel. Tripping Arcadia, this is a gothic thriller, and this is a debut novel as well, and I've heard good things about this one. I've heard it's also for people that like things like The Great Gatsby combined with Mexican Gothic, that sort of vibe. And it follows this girl that she's really struggling financially and she wants to help her family because they're really struggling, and she gets this job that seems too good to be true. I know this is a typical plot line, but I'm still excited about it. So she gets this offer for the perfect job, helping the doctor in a really wealthy family. So during the day she helps the doctor, you know, she's like an assistant to the doctor, and during the night she kind of helps the family to throw these really weird, interesting parties that go on in this house that nobody knows what exactly going on there. So of course I'm expecting her to do some really dark discoveries on this wealthy family, and probably that's why it was so easy for her to get the job, because there's probably something obscure going on in the house. And yeah, another mystery that sounds fantastic. So many like horror gothic mystery thrillers coming out that I just don't even know which one I want to check out first. Spontaneous Human Combustion by Richard Thomas, and this is a compilation of short horror stories. I believe we have here a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of horror, all kind of meshed up together. I personally have never heard about the author or read anything by him, but apparently he's had published short horror story collections before. So if you're a fan of his works, then there is a new story compilation coming out for you. And if you want to get to know the author, you know, maybe some short horror stories are also good for you to decide if you enjoy the author or not. All right guys, so this is everything that I had on my list that is coming out in February 2022. I know the list was very long, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to include as much as possible to give you guys, you know, as many options as possible. And of course, as always, I think there is even more things out there. So if there's anything else in February that I missed, let me know in the comments down below. And let me know, what are you the most excited for that it's coming out in February 2022? Let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please give the video a big thumbs up, and I hope to see you all in our next coffee time. Bye!